We are live. Welcome to the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast presented by Yahoo. Back again for a week 4 edition. My name is Chris Kirkwood, screen name Kirk Dees. I'm your host, co-host with me, the well-esteemed tournament crusher, Brian Jester from Occupy Fantasy. And we're back after, I think it was what ended up being a decent week for both of us in the end of things. How did it work out for you?
Yeah, what's up, Chris? Yeah, I had a sweat. I finished top 10 in the milli on DraftKings, so that was close. And then doubled up for the bankroll challenge on Yahoo, so I can't complain.
Nice. There's nothing like a milli sweat.
Nothing.
And I remember last season I won the slant one week, and I didn't play the milli, and it would have been actually I got second in the slant, and I lost in like grueling fashion. But the payout structures are fine with the second place for the slant, but I didn't enter the milli, and I would have been like the favorite to win the milli for most of the day. And so I was like, I would have won $100,000. And I'm like, wow, what's worse? Feeling like I lost 900,000 and winning $100,000, or the position that I am in right now where I didn't even enter. Obviously I would have liked $100,000, but man, I can only imagine what $1 million sweat is like.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Especially if you win. Yeah.
Yes.
You've got that in the bag already too. So, all right. So we're back. We've got 13 games. We've got 5 games with a 51.5 point total or higher. We're going to do the same layout with our QB, start with QB, go all the way to tight end with values and then our main player who we think is going to be our main player, at least the people in contention for our main players for this week. Maybe give some tips along the way, but, just a big picture overview. I know you were talking pre-show, and we were talking about. It seems like kind of there's a lot of interesting options. We've got some cheaper running backs. We've got some mid-range running backs that look really good, and then we've got the big question with: are we really going to pay $41 for Derrick Henry? But we've got a lot of ways to go with lineup builds this week. I feel it's not as I feel like it's not going to be as chalky as last week was, but is that kind of your overall sentiment?
That's what I'm thinking. Last week pushed because of the pricing, there weren't that many great options. It pushed a lot of us to a lot of the same plays, where this week I feel like we have, 6 or 7 running backs that are a little bit underpriced that we can play. The receivers, there are a few options. There's no clear-cut quarterback, at least I don't think. So, yeah, I do agree it'll be less chalky, but it doesn't mean it's any less of a slate, because there are a lot of good options that are slightly underpriced.
No, of course. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, that's going to make it a good slate with plenty of options everywhere. Basically last week came down to, and I told you that I basically broke even. I won in cash games, but I pretty much bricked in all the tournaments. And that was because, once again, Cooper Kupp just keep burying me, right? But I got lucky. I got lucky to salvage and have basically a break-even week because of Big Mike Williams and that unnecessary touchdown that he caught in the corner there that I loved every second of.
We'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. But man, we're gonna have to talk about some Cooper Kupp when we get there. But all right, let's start at QB. So the man who's back on top now, who after a massive week last week is Josh Allen, my boy Josh Allen again. I'm kind of upset that I didn't end up playing him as my main guy last week, but I wanted to at times. I thought I was going to, but he showed us what he's back. 37 fantasy points, and Washington defense hasn't looked so hot this season. But anyway, 4 passing TDs. That's what this guy's going to do. He also had a rushing TD. He had 4 rushing attempts for only 9 yards. So, I mean, this was just a passing Josh Allen, and that's good because we're going against Houston, who's another terrible defense, right? And so the thing that's really nice about Josh Allen here is that not only does he have like a really good matchup that he should do great in, like they don't seem to take the foot off the gas, right? Like he was still out there chucking against Miami when they won that game 35-0. He was absolutely chucking till the very end against Washington last week. So I feel like it does feel pretty safe in this spot as the top guy. But there are values. We got Jalen Hurts, potentially another value. We got the bounce back Justin Fields to go to with. I want to hear your take on that potentially. And then the other guys I wrote down was maybe for really cheap was for Jacoby Brissett, who I'll probably have some. I don't really love it, but I'll have some. And then I kind of like Sam Arnold this week. But what are the guys that you were thinking of?
Yeah, you hit on most of them. I think, yeah, Josh Allen is definitely the clear top option if you can afford to pay up, and I think we probably can this week. And you mentioned Jalen Hurts. That's probably the big decision for your main lineup, I would imagine, whether it's Hurts or paying up for Allen. You mentioned a couple of the cheap guys, Brissett, Mayfield. It's really tough to click Justin Fields' name after what happened last week, but you got to figure it's a much easier matchup this time around. You got to imagine they run the ball a little bit more. Bill Lazor's calling plays, not Matt Nagy this time. So I think a lot of things are going to be different than last week. So yeah, I think for your main lineup, I don't think you need to go down that cheap to those guys because there are values. So to me, it's between Hurts and Allen. And then once we get to tournaments, we have those quarterbacks from those high total games.
Yeah, so with Justin Fields, the way I look at it, I'm fine going back with him. I think it was a terrible, I think it was a tough matchup and terrible coaching last week. I think another week under their belt, some pressure, and then a nice matchup with Detroit here should do the trick. This is a gutted secondary, so he should have plenty of opportunity to, if he can hit some passes, and hopefully they get him going with his legs a little bit more. But, I played Lamar against this same defense last week, and I had a lot of pairings with Marquise Brown, which was really tilting. I did that over on FanDuel too. I mean, he could have broke the slate. He could have been Cooper Kupp. He dropped 2 40-yard plus touchdowns, gimmies that were literally off his fingertips. That shouldn't be dropped by an NFL caliber receiver, but things happen. But so the potential against this secondary is certainly high. So I do like this game. Hopefully the Bears can get things corrected this week. There'll be a lot of other plays too to get into with stacking. We're gonna with this, and the running backs are both great plays this weekend from both sides of the ball. I mean, DeAndre Swift looks freaking electric. And now he's getting the coach speak about, potentially getting more work now. And David Montgomery's workload's been a little bit down, but not so bad. But I think the big games are still up in there for him. So there's a lot of interesting plays in this game. All right. So Brissett or Darnold? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think for me it's Darnold, right? Brissett's a pure value, but I'd rather pay just a couple more bucks and get Darnold because they're playing in the high total game. Should be a pace-up matchup against the Cowboys. I mean, those higher total games are where I'm targeting my tournament lineups. Dak and Darnold, Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, and then Kyler. And we can go back to Matthew Stafford again. I know we like to have rushing upside, so I'm honestly lean towards Kyler, Hurts, and Dak of that group. But some of those other guys, I mean, they're all great plays. There are 6, 8, 10 quarterbacks that are really, really, really good options this week.
Yeah, we've got the Arizona Rams game, Carolina Dallas, which you just mentioned. Those are two are high totals. I kind of like this Washington Falcons game too. I'm just kind of trying to be optimistic and thinking maybe these guys will show up because both of their defenses are poor.
If Atlanta can't get right after this game, then they're never going to get right.
And I mean, and it's so obvious too. Like at the end of the day, you're going to feel like if this game busts, you're going to be like, obviously this game busts. Matt Ryan is dust, and Tyler Haneke or whatever his name is. But all right, the main plays is where this gets interesting, right? Because I think it's going to be, for the most part, unless you're Jalen Hurts is kind of up there in that price range for the main plays anyway. So I guess it would be between Josh Allen would be the number one for me. Mahomes, I'm definitely interested in trying to get up to. And then Dak is right there at 35 and Jalen Hurts is at 32. I'm scared of Jalen Hurts and this Philly, team not showing up. And, but I am very confident in Patrick Mahomes lighting this defense up. So Mahomes is kind of the guy I'm looking to get up to. Is that kind of what your thoughts are?
Yeah, right in line with what I'm thinking. I think Dak is probably my favorite overall play for tournaments. Carolina's defense is getting a ton of pressure on the quarterback, but they haven't played great competition. And Dak, if you watch the film or read people's articles who watch the film, he's calling audibles basically every single play at the line of scrimmage. So I think he can mitigate that pressure with his audibles. So I think Dak in this game is he's probably my favorite if I'm not playing Allen or Hurts in my main lineup.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You brought up that the Carolina defense. Everyone's talking about how good this Carolina defense is, but really they faced the Jets, the Texans, and a Jameis Winston, right? So those three, right? So this has been good matchups for their D. So we'll get a real sense this week, and so that'll be interesting to see. I do worry a little bit about Dak not rushing so much, but man, there's so many weapons there that he certainly has the ceiling, right? Like this game could definitely pop off. So I'm with you there. That's kind of those are all the plays I had written down. I can look through and see some other guys that I didn't quite make the cut right now. Well, first of all, I mean, it's tough for Kyler, but Kyler should always be in consideration. That game is as a monster. It's a 54-point total as of right now. Plus Stafford looks great. I Stafford would be like fits someone I'm definitely considering who's not the usual rushing upside quarterback that I tend to gravitate towards on Yahoo. But you like Stafford at all?
Yeah, I mean, they're passing at a way higher expectation than they ever have under McVay, and I got to imagine that's because of the upgrade from Goff to Stafford. So if they're going to keep passing this much and against a team that's going to run a ton of plays, yeah, you got to like it. So he's definitely in consideration for me too.
And then I look down and I'm like, man, it doesn't seem like anybody's going to play Aaron Rodgers. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to play Russell Wilson. Maybe that's being optimistic, but their projected ownerships are certainly low. And these are guys that we should probably be playing every week, no matter what.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we know they have 3, 4, 5 touchdown upside, so it's hard to argue. Just for me, it's the game environments are a little bit better for these other quarterbacks we've already discussed.
Yeah, I did write down on my trusty old pen and paper that the games I liked the most was Carolina, Dallas, Washington, Falcons. Those were my top 2 that I was going to try to get, and then obviously I like Mahomes, but I do kind of worry about the blowout in this one. I mean, Philly just looked terrible the other night.
Yeah, I'm trying to wipe that from my memory. The national primetime game bias. I'm trying to get it out of my memory because they did not look great at all.
And it hurts me with some really dumb decisions in that game.
It still got to like 28 fantasy points or whatever it was, right?
He got there. He got enough, but you just didn't look good. And man, with the Chiefs being down, losing 2 games, they're going to be out for blood in this one, after 2 straight losses. Yep. So, all right, let's head over to the running back position, or actually, should we go wide receiver right now since we just talked?
Might as well. Let's go receivers.
Let's go receivers. All right, so the ones I wrote down for the values, I think DJ Moore is a ridiculous value.
Yep,
I mean, this guy is just getting peppered with targets. Robbie Anderson is just an afterthought. I'm gonna mention Robbie Anderson because he's getting a lot of coach speak. He's dirt cheap on Yahoo. He's $14. He's got big play upside. He's being the squeaky wheel at this point. So wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, I think we gotta play some of him. And then Nicole Hardman is still $10, stone minimum. There's 1 and 1A for receivers, and it's Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill let me down last week. That's why I didn't do so well, is because as I was saying, I ended up fading Kelce and playing Hawkinson and playing Tyreek in my main lineup, which, man, that was a fail. But he's going to go off sooner or later. Certainly, this is a defense that he can get behind. So like that, and Brandon Ayuk I wrote down for kind of a sneaky play, $15, and Corey Davis I wrote down. Do you like it? Who do you like out of that list? Am I missing anyone for the cheap value guys?
Yeah, so DJ Moore was the first person I wrote down as well. He's far too cheap given his target volume. Robbie Anderson I did list as well. Like you said, Sam Darnold's talking about we need to get him the ball more, and he is too cheap, assuming we can get some volume out of him. Mecole Hardman's another guy that you mentioned that is, again, his minimum price. The other guy that I wrote down that's in that mid-tier range is Brandon Cooks, who I imagine they're going to be throwing most of this game against Josh Allen if the spread holds true. And Cooks' target volume is like record-setting at this point. And with Davis Mills, sounds like Davis Mills getting the start again. He's worked exclusively with him after practice. He trusts Brandon Cooks. He said he's trusted Brandon Cooks. So I can't imagine that target volume stops. And then right before we started recording, news dropped that both A.J. Brown and Julio Jones were officially ruled out, which means we have 3 min-price Tennessee wide receivers who are going to be starting. Ryan Tannehill was talking up Nick Westbrook-Akina, who ran a ton of routes last week, and Chester Rogers playing out of the slot, has been playing out of the slot all year. I think those are the two best options from Tennessee. And they, in a matchup against the Jets, I think at minimum price, they're certainly worth considering.
Definitely. But there's also potential with this Derrick Henry has gotten 40 carries in a game, 40 touches in a game before.
Yeah. Right.
35 and 6 targets, 35, and this very well could lead to a massive workload for Derrick Henry. Sure, we got to figure out, it's definitely worth taking a shot on some of these guys, but I don't feel confident for sure with them. Although your guy, I know you did mention Chester Rogers one of these weeks. So
we'll see if he can pan out. You mentioned Ayuk, right? I think maybe people will be off of him, but his role was back to normal in week 3. Ran the same amount of routes he was running back in 2020. Was getting targets, air yards, end zone targets. So I agree. I think the pricing hasn't caught up to his role being back to normal yet.
Yeah, definitely. And I like list guys that I like. Do I still believe in their talent level? Yes, I do. And he's like perfect for that list. It's like, we've only had 3 games. We know a 3-game sample in NFL is nothing. Things take a little while. I mean, he's gonna have games. It's gonna happen. But over on the main plays, might as well segue right to Deebo Samuel because he looks too cheap. I mean, he's averaging 10 targets a game against Seattle. This should be a game with some points in it. So I definitely like him. And I mean, we got like a stacked middle high end range, right? So the guys I wrote down, so Deebo I had circled. I had McLaurin for 22. Those guys are both 22. Then Calvin Ridley is only $24. We've seen a price decrease with him. He's still the guy. He's still an insane route runner. His quarterback plays look terrible so far, but this could be the week. I mentioned I like that game. And then we've got the high-end guys, which we can fit, especially if we're going to throw in one of the Tennessee cheaper receivers that we end up liking by the end of the week. We're all going to be on the same – we're all going to end up getting spoon-fed a bunch of information like by Evan Silva or whoever or Levitan or anybody from RG or from Occupy. We're gonna end up with a favorite one, but whichever one that is, it's going to make it easy to – at least give us the option to pay up for Diggs, like do like a Josh Allen to Diggs, or Devontae Adams, or going right back to the Tyreek well for an blow up spot potentially.
Yeah, I mean Diggs is probably my favorite option if we can get up that high, mostly because he's got some variance coming his way. We talked about, I think it was last week, we mentioned Josh Allen's inaccuracies downfield, and it didn't matter because he put up 4 touchdowns, and there's going to be some regression coming on his deep balls, and Diggs has only caught 1 deep ball this year out of 8. I think it's 8 or 10 targets of 15 or more air yards. So Diggs is going to continue to get volume, and you got to believe that they're eventually going to connect, and what better matchup for them to connect. So for me, Diggs, if I'm paying up, I think is by far the best option. I hope he doesn't get as much ownership as his matchup might indicate, but he's in line for a huge game.
Yep, and you bring him back with Cooks, who you already mentioned, so that works pretty easily. We can fill it out with value from there. Yeah, I like that. Justin Jefferson is another guy that I like. That I think he might get overlooked this week. All right, hit me. Cooper Kupp is now $36.
Dude, he's like Devontae Adams from last year, where he just keeps scoring touchdowns, and no matter how much his price increases, no matter how much I don't play him, he continues to score touchdowns. What kills me is obviously him and Stafford have a connection. And if you look at advanced metrics, yes, Kupp is technically overperforming his opportunity volume, his air yards, whatever it may be, but they're literally drawing up plays on the sidelines for this guy in the red zone. And when we have those types of narratives, it's hard to continue fading him when they have that trust and they're literally making plays for him to score touchdowns. So, he has to be in consideration every week, and he's going to be in consideration every week because most likely the Rams are going to be involved in one of the highest total games pretty much every single week, which means we're stacking that game, which means we have to consider Cooper Kupp. So, as much as I want to continue to fade the guy, I think you can only play him, though, if you're stacking that game because, if you're going to play a 40% owned dude with no other correlation around it, I mean, that's bad DFS. So, to me, if I'm going to play him, I got to have some other correlation involved in that game.
Yeah. shouldn't be that high owned. I don't think this because of his price, but for sure, I get it. I mean, if you're spending that much money, if he's going to go off, you're probably going to want the quarterback with him. All right. So I was talking with a good friend of mine, Ali. He's a DFS crusher. GQINXS is his screen name. But anyway, we were talking about Cup, and he was like, it just makes too much sense. You want to keep fading him every week, but like literally, really, the reality is that the role has changed. They used to only play him. He's first of all, he gets open from the slot at will. He always has got open from the slot at will. It's just that didn't keep him on the field for, and Robert Woods was getting, 100% of the snaps, and Cup was much lower. And so it enabled Woods to kind of be a number one wide receiver in addition to Cup being one. And now with just Cup on the field all the time and certainly connecting with Stafford, it just, it's got to be. He was saying that this is for real, and he doesn't see Cup changing. So he thinks he's like the new Devontae. But we'll see. We'll see how that.
I mean, and they're just passing more in general, right?
Yeah.
He's on the field more, and they're passing more, and they're passing more around the goal line. So, like you said, it really is Devontae Adams part 2.
All right. Let's take a look here. Like I said, Jefferson is a guy I like. Talk to me about McLaurin, or is Curtis? Do you know if Curtis Samuel is supposed to be back this week?
So Ron Rivera said today that he's expecting him to go, which is kind of weird to me because the dude's practiced 3 times since like June. So I have a hard time believing that he's in full game shape, but it sounds like he's going to play. And is he min price on Yahoo? I haven't checked.
He's got to be. Oh my God, he's $16. So
for no reason.
Yeah, but he's min price on DraftKings.
Right. That's where he was min priced. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what his role is going to be, but DraftKings especially, he's a play. I don't know if you can play him on Yahoo, but again, you keep talking about, McLaurin. We'll talk about some running backs. Like that is a game that you can potentially stack just because they are values on Yahoo.
Yep. All right. Any other plays that I'm missing that you want to make sure people have? Metcalf, I see a little injury tag next to him. Is there anything going on here?
Yeah, he tweaked his ankle. It sounds like he's fine. Lockett missed practice Thursday. He tweaked his ankle. It was more of a tweak probably in that game. So we'll have to monitor that because that's 2 injuries to obviously the upside in that game that could affect it.
Yep. All right. And I think Allen Robinson has got to come through one of these days. He's down low priced at $17. So certainly, I mean that's the obvious pairing with Fields.
Yep.
And then Odell Beckham, $27 on Yahoo, a little steep, but on other sites I'm certainly interested. But I think he looks pretty good out there.
No one's going to play him, right, at 27 on Yahoo, and he commanded a huge share of the targets and air yards last week, and he looked back. So, that Cleveland-Minnesota game does have a bit of a higher total. It could be stacked. We talked about Mayfield being a potential value. So, I think Odell Beckham makes sense in some lineups.
All right, let's take it on over to running backs. Interesting spot this week because we've got a ton of different ways to go, and we don't just have like 3 main mid-tier plays like we've had so far each week. We've got cheap, who looks amazing, is DeAndre Swift. The Bears defense has been underperforming for sure. DeAndre is electric. Had a nice game last week. Is getting the targets this year, which is great. So 11 targets his first game, 5, his second, 7. Then the last game, caught all 7 balls for 60 yards last week. Certainly he's got to be a top main play this week. Mike Davis is cheap at $14. Now he's earned that cheap price tag. He's under 10 fantasy points in each of his games. He's right there, basically around the 9-point mark. But the opportunity's been there, right? 15 rushing attempts in the first week, 12 in the last week. He does get targets. He got 6, 7, and 4 targets. So certainly the opportunity is there. I've already talked about how I like this game. I might feel stupid. I will feel stupid if I lose a bunch of money going crazy on this game, but I think it's going to be kind of overshadowed a little bit by these other games. And I think it's like one of those NBA DFS two bad defenses put him up against each other too, like the Sacramento Kings against the Chicago Bulls, that like you just end up wanting all the guys from this game because they all end up going off. So that's kind of like the way I view this game. Could crash and burn for sure. And then, so then we've got guys in like the mid-range, like we've got Najee again, who's got a terrible quarterback, which could be. He probably needs Ben needs to do a little bit better for him to really have some big games, take some pressure off, because he's just running right into a line that's stacked against him. But he got 19 freaking targets last week. I mean, that's what the hell. I don't care
if he gets 0 rushing attempts. If he's going to get 19 targets every week, we're going to play him, especially at $21 or whatever he is.
That's insane. So yeah, we gotta like him, and his price is back where he was, I think, week 1, or no, I think it's even lower. So you gotta like that. David Montgomery, I believe in. I think he's got a big game is on the horizon. He had some great plays that were called back by penalties too this season so far. $21, he's right in that range. We've got Henderson to consider, right? If he's going to be back, we do have he does have a little bit of competition, but I still think I think he's the much better back over Sony Michel for sure. Although Sony has did fine, and he has looked all right. He looks better than he ever did in a Pats uniform. I'll say that. And I've certainly watched him a lot. Clyde is $18 again. So there's like a lot of these guys like in that range. What's Gibson at? Antonio Gibson?
Yeah, he's 23? He's up there too. And then the other guy you haven't mentioned is Chase Edmonds too. He's 14, and they're playing. Basically, Arizona has led most of the games they've played this year, and that's favored James Conner getting more of the rush attempts. But if they do trail, like this game suggests they should, in a pace-up game, it should be more Edmonds. And Edmonds has a pretty high floor with his receiving volume. So Edmonds, DeAndre Swift, Mike Davis, Montgomery, Najee Harris, and then Chuba Hubbard, who's 17. He won't get the full Christian McCaffrey workload, but as we saw with this offense last year, the same system in place, they do target the running backs at a frequently high rate. And Hubbard had 5 targets in relief after McCaffrey left. So, and the common theme here, right, Chris, is like all these guys have receiving volume. And even though it's a half-point PPR site,
that's weird. I'm usually not looking for that on Yahoo so much, but certainly it's fine. But each one of these guys has massive touchdown equity too that we're mentioning. So, I mean, I like Chase Edmonds. Sure, I have nothing bad. I don't think Connor is very good. I wish they would just let Edmonds loose for all of it, but he's definitely electric in the passing game. Like you said, they should be from behind. That LA Rams defense is legit to me. Looks really good to me. And then Saquon is back. Tough matchup with New Orleans, but that's what I paid up for Saquon last week. Nice. For 24. I mean, it was nice, but it wasn't, because like pretty much everyone kind of everyone kind of had the same.
True. Yeah.
So he kind of just kind of wash. It was a wash, but that was my thought process anyway. And then for, the main ones, I mean, then Zeke should be considered, I think. I mean, they made a point to give him some touchdowns in the last game. He's $22. He looks good. He does. Yep. Pollard also looks good. That's why I'm a little bit worried about Dak this week, is because that both of these guys on the rushing side look so good. But, the game could go break anyway. But he should definitely be considered. And then Derrick Henry, I mean, if we're getting a bunch of value, if we have $14 running backs that we can feel pretty good, if we end up liking one of these Tennessee guys by the end of the week, strong feelings there, then paying up for Henry at $41 is definitely in play.
You almost have to, right? I don't know if you have to, but I feel like it's, with the value we have this week and Henry's in the clear best spot, I think you got to almost try to prioritize that in your main lineup. Do you often do that when there's a situation like this on Yahoo? So, I mean, people, you would know, McCaffrey wasn't on the main slate this last week, but you'll notice like last week, a lot of people paid up for, that was the big decision. Was paying up for CMC. And excuse me, I had a cough. And go ahead while I take it. I got you. So, yeah, so people, it depends, because there's some weeks this year where it was just all mid-range guys, but this week, the fact that every single running back that we've talked about so far is like $2 or $3 cheaper and doesn't seem like much, but that adds up if you can play one or two of those guys. It does allow you to pay up, because the receivers we're likely playing in our main lineups are in that $15 to $25 range. So if the pricing is going to make it this easy and Henry's going to get 35 touches or whatever, then yeah, I think you almost have to play him. And it's against the Jets.
And,
Also true.
this is a game that like they're probably, sitting out Julio and sitting out AJ Brown because they probably feel like they can do it. It might be a different story if it was against a much better team. Maybe it wouldn't, but maybe it would. And certainly seems like you can just lean on Derrick Henry to get the job done, and he'll have massive touchdown equity in this game because they're, maybe these other guys score or whatever, but Henry's going to be the first guy who gets
for sure.
Chance.
The other two guys I wrote down as kind of pivots, one away from Henry and one away from these cheaper running backs, is Alvin Kamara, because they're 7-point favorites. They're running the ball more than any team in the league. It's them and the Bengals running above expectation. So Kamara is going to get a ton of work. And then Cordero Patterson is surprisingly get a ton of work at running back. We mentioned him last week getting 40% of the touches and kind of hurting Mike Davis's value. But if this game does shoot out a little bit like you think, Chris, then Patterson at $13, he could outscore some of these other guys because he has so far this year if he gets a touchdown.
Yep. See, we're just loaded. We got so many plays in there. Aaron Jones is a little bit banged up, limited during Thursday's practice, but I mean, he's been great, but Pittsburgh is a little bit better against the run. They are a tough matchup against the run. So maybe that's unnecessary, but no, it's going to be a big decision. I'm going to try to make some builds with Henry and see how I like him. So he's definitely in contention. I look at it as the same as whether if you're going to play CMC or not.
Fair.
All right, Miles Sanders is somebody that I'm kind of interested in. In order, if Philly's going to stay in this game, huge if, right? You want to keep the ball out of Mahomes' hands, like. You want to lean on the run, chew up a bunch of clock. Miles Sanders looks good, hasn't had, massive games, but it hasn't been his fault. I mean, it looks terrible in that last game, but that was all game script, and it might very well be a poor game script again. But like for a low-owned tournament play, I think Miles Sanders is certainly in play.
For sure. And I like Jonathan Taylor too. He's going overlooked, and his volume hasn't been what we want it to be so far this year, but we saw what Peyton Barber did to the Dolphins last week. I think JT could have a similar performance, and I can't imagine many people are rushing to play him after his performances through 3 weeks. Second
most touches within the 10 yards of the goal line. It's Derrick Henry number 1, and it's Jonathan Taylor number 2. So the opportunity is going to be there. He is a good back. This could be the right game for him, and no one's going to play him at $28. So it's just right in that no man's land, right? Because we're stacked with the low end, we're stacked with like the 18 to 24 range, and then there's Jonathan Taylor at 20, and Nick Chubb too, at 28 and 29.
Love that.
All right, let's take it on over to tight ends. All right, so it's Travis Kelce as per usual, and I always end up trying to figure out a way to fade him, but man, I felt stupid last week. Although he didn't kill me. It's just I was killed because Hawkinson did nothing.
That was surprising.
It was so crazy to me that I don't know if that was because they lean on him so hard in blowouts, or if it was just he needed to block more blocking responsibilities, or if it just didn't go his way for a game. I don't know what to think, but it certainly reminds you of the variance in tight ends. Yes. And that's why Travis Kelce is such a great play, because there isn't that much variance. I mean, 13.9 fantasy points is a bad game for him, right? We saw the floor for Hawkinson. So that's the main decision, is whether you're going to pay up for Kelce. George Kittle is certainly, you get a discount at 22 for arguably, someone just as good as Travis Kelce. Then we've got guys like Kyle Pitts bounce back. I don't know. So I'm a little, the thing, I play it cautious with tight ends in year one. Like it's the same exact thing like with Hawkinson, right? Like he was drafted. Oh, he's going to be the next Gronk. Patricia's going to use him like the Patriot system, but they never ended up using him, right? And it's like, it seems like it just takes a while for teams to really utilize a tight end, because of the blocking responsibilities and whatnot. So I always kind of worry about rookies, but Pitts is electric. Certainly could come back here and have a big game. So his price is fine. His price is kind of cheap at $16. So him, maybe Mark Andrews, but tough matchup against Denver, but he's got to pass to someone. Mark Andrews looked had a really solid game with, they probably wouldn't have had such a solid game if Hollywood. And it's not even, he's from Hollywood, Florida I just found out his nickname. I was wondering why they called him Hollywood, because he's so flashy or like really good, or he's from out there. It's because he's from Hollywood, Florida. So, because I was calling him West Hollywood to my friend says that like there's a lot of homeless in West Hollywood, so I kept calling him West Hollywood Brown after that.
He's one drop away from just dropping the nickname altogether.
Yeah. I don't know. What are you thinking at tight end?
So Hawk, Andrews, Pitts are those mid-range guys, and then to me, I think the decision there are like 4 or 5 guys that are really cheap if you need to punt at tight end that I think could make a ton of sense. So we have Dalton Schultz, who I'm not thrilled about playing after a 2-touchdown game, but at $10. Mike Gesicki, who got back into a full-time role last week with Jacoby Brissett. Evan Ingram, like all the receivers are hurt, and I'm not a big Evan Ingram fan, but again, he's super cheap, and they're going to be without Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, and Kenny Galladay's a little bit banged up. Tyler Higbee, his price decreased after scoring last week. And then the fifth and final option I'm not as thrilled about is Anthony Firkser, but they have no receivers, and he's $10, and he's coming back this week for Tennessee. So I think there are enough options there that if you want to fade Kelsey, you can drop all the way down. If you want to pay up somewhere else, I'm not sure I'm going to do that, but I think it's an option.
I told my friend to bet on Zach Ertz TD prop the other night, and that hit. So I thought you were going to mention, when you said Firkser, I thought maybe you were going to mention Zach Ertz there at $12. Do you think he's just dust? Or
I mean, he's getting run, so it's hard to argue in a game where they should throw. I mean, they threw a lot on Monday night too, so I don't know. I mean, I would prefer a guy in a full-time role, and all the guys we mentioned. I guess Schultz isn't in a full-time role, but he's in a good offense. So I don't know. I have a tough time playing Ertz because I think the target ceiling is capped.
If we want to go down, this is for tournament play. No one's going to play this guy, right? This is a guy who's always been like min-priced forever. He's maybe lucky if he gets end zone, red zone look, and capitalizes on it. But Dawson Knox, this is a guy that we were all kind of like high on last season, coming into this season, and it didn't pan out so much. And then we were like, oh, Bills don't use the tight end or much, but he's certainly emerging. Like, I feel like he looks good. He's rattled off, not monster games, but he's got a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. Certainly an easy matchup here. And I think this kind of could be the emergence of Dawson Knox this season. And like, he's going to keep getting better and better. And this is the guy who we wanted to see last season. It is concerning because Josh has all those weapons and can certainly just take it in himself around there. But this is a guy I don't think anyone's going to play at $18 because you're just not used to seeing that price on him. He's overpriced.
Right. Yeah, no one's going to play him at that price. But to me, it's, tight end is so tough. It's such a wasteland. And if you're going to play Josh Allen, instead of punting the tight end or just trying to hope your tight end scores 10 points, why not play your quarterback's tight end, who we've already identified in a great spot, has a potential to throw 3, 4, 5 touchdowns. Good chance that one of them goes to your tight end and he outscores all these other values. So, again, I don't think anyone's going to play him, probably mostly for tournaments, but it makes a ton of sense at this type of position.
Yep. So finalizing my pool here, and I did run like what I would normally run on a Sunday, and at this point in the week, so I was getting the most Kelsey. I was getting a lot of Tyler Higbee, a lot of George Kittle, some Pitts, some Andrews, some Ertz, some Schultz, and some Hawkinson and Gesicki. That was kind of my pool. And then Logan Thomas was someone I needed to make a decision on and potentially manually bump up.
But you're stacking that game, so you got to get every player involved into your player pool. So, I think we're on the same page with these guys. The guys at the bottom, guys in the middle range, and then if you can get up to Kelsey. So, all in all, I think it's a pretty clear plan this week, right? You get 1, maybe 2 of those cheaper running backs. Try to pay up for Henry if you can. This for your main lineup, right? Allen or Hurts, and then the Kelsey or the cheap guys at tight end. And then we have those $18 to $22 receivers like we normally do. So Chris, I think we're in line for a pretty solid week here.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I think I came off of a single game bink last night with 4 of my friends.
Congrats
for a nice little hit. I figured it's because I read the Occupy Showdown guide that you gave me. So I owe it all to you guys.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So anyways, I think we're so let's just finalize it with stacks here. Give a couple of stacks. And right now where I'm at, I mean, I was getting, man, I got to redo this, getting way too much Carolina.
No, you're in good shape, man. That game's gonna go off, and if you can play Darnold as a cheaper option, I like it a lot. I really do.
DJ Moore is so cheap for the kind of production. I mean, he's just looking at him every single play. It's like DJ Moore. All right, so Kansas City, Mahomes, definitely want Mahomes, right? So you can even make lineups with playing Mahomes. It's tough, but it's not out of the realm of lineup. You can still make pretty decent lineups this week with Kelsey, Tyreek, and Mahomes. Usually that's impossible to do on Yahoo, but this is the week where we've got enough of these cheaper running backs, cheaper wide receivers where we can make that happen. So that's in play. I guess my favorite, my favorite is Josh Allen, but it always is. I think maybe I'll say my favorite will. No, I'm not going to say Matt Ryan's my favorite. I can't do it. So I'm just going to say my favorite is actually the Mahomes. That to doing that Mahomes high price double stack or using Mecole Hardman and just smashing in value everywhere you can and every single which way. I think that's a pretty good lineup this construction this week. But the big decision is going to be Derrick Henry or not.
Yeah, it's very tough. So top stack for you is Mahomes, and like you said, it's much harder to do that on FanDuel or DraftKings compared to Yahoo, especially this week. So I do like that this week. I'm going to stick with my guy Dak in that game. Honestly, maybe the move is just flipping it and playing Darnold, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, who we've identified as underpriced, and running back with one of the Dallas receivers or Zeke for the big tournament. So I think I'll go with that as my stack. I'll go with the Darnold side.
I like that too. You got a sneaky one? Somewhere, some gross one.
Oh man, always got a gross one for you. Let me see here. I'm going to say this. Okay, we're getting really gross now, and we'll go with Pittsburgh. Big Ben, Najee Harris, and I like Claypool this week because he's underperformed. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet. So give me the Pittsburgh side, running back with Devontae Adams. I don't know if I'll ever do that, but if you're looking for a super gross stack, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'll probably look to Aaron Rodgers on the other side and try to figure out a
It's probably a much better idea.
I can't. I just don't want to root for Ben. I just can't.
That's fair.
Can't do it. All right. So this is a quick. We got done in time. Perfect. So this has been the RG DFS Tournament Takes podcast, week 4, and we will catch you next week. Thanks.